Welcome to Geotab online training. Today's session is My Geotab's Dashboards and Standard Reports.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Geotab online training. This is Carrie Carter, and I have with me Angie Milne, our reports expert, who will lead us through our dashboards and standard reports, and Jordan Guter, our technical expert from our support team, answering any questions you might have. If you have any questions regarding the topic being discussed, please write them in the question box on the side of your screen, down at the bottom there, and we will be happy to discuss it at the end of the topic. If you have questions that don't pertain to what we're discussing, please reach out to your reseller or your account manager, and we'll certainly go over whatever we can with you and help you out. So let's do a quick audio and visual check. If you just want someone to, if you could possibly put in a yes if you can hear us and see us on screen. Great. All right, a little bit of troubleshooting. If you find your line is crackling or breaking up, please hang up and dial back in or click back in. Often this corrects the problem because it's usually a bad line. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Angie, who will walk us through the dashboard tips and tricks and standard reports.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. So yes, my name is Angie Milne. I am an account manager here at Geotab. Some of you may refer to me as the Excel guru. Basically, what I'm going to be covering today is, yes, dashboards and standard reports at a high level. We will be doing a more advanced webinar later this month. So this one here is more so a basic one. So just a quick outline here. This is kind of what I'm going to be covering over today. So I'm going to show a couple of sample dashboards that I've created, and then I'm going to go over actually how my Geotab reports work. Next, we're going over tips and tricks that I've kind of come across along the way working with our reports. And then I'm actually going to create a template right in front of you guys, and you can always follow along if you want to. And then finally, I'm going to cover some things to watch out for when you're working with our custom reports. Okay, so sample dashboards. So these are actually some dashboards that I created really quickly to kind of just give you an idea of what we can do with the data. Obviously not limited to this, but just some samples for you. And you can see I actually kind of broke it down into our pillars there. We've got the first two there are safety-related reports. We've got our top 5 speeding, and safety driver scorecard. And then the middle one there is actually an activity summary, which relates to our productivity pillar. And then the final one there is last week's idle costs that's trended day over day, a really nice looking report. And that kind of relates back to our fuel and ROI pillars. So when it comes to custom reports, really what you want to think about is what are you looking for? Why did you sign up with telematics? What is it about telematics that you really need? So are you looking at more safety side of things? Is it more productivity related? Are you looking at stops and routing? Or is it related to fuel and you want to bring your fuel costs down? Or your overall cost down and looking at that ROI? Those are the first things that I recommend to kind of figure out. And then from there you can actually look at what types of reports you can create based on that information and really open it up instead of just kind of starting off with some standard reports that may not necessarily mean anything to your particular fleet. What I recommend for our dashboards is to actually set them up as a quick snapshot of data. So, I usually recommend doing a top or bottom 5 or 10, nothing where you've got the entire fleet showing on a graph that, we all know, I've seen them before, where you've got the entire fleet on a graph and you can't even really distinguish between the data because there's just so much on there. So dashboards are meant to be a snapshot where you can quickly identify any outliers, and then you can open up them and get down to the nitty-gritty, per se. Another way to do it is to actually maybe break it down by regions as well, which is really nice when you're pairing it with our grouping and user clearances. You can really get certain general managers only see their own data. So I'm actually going to open up one of our reports And I'm just going to kind of go over how they work. Okay, so this is a standard report. Actually, it's one of those ones that I showed you at the beginning there, top 5 speeding report. And basically what I'm going to kind of cover over is the 3 different tabs that our reports have. So this is the standard top 5 speeding report that I showed you in the quick little screenshot there. So every Geotab report comes with 3 tabs. Now, you're actually only seeing 2 of them right off the bat, the report and the summary tab. There is a data tab that we always keep hidden, and that's basically where the raw data is fed into from the database. And the reason why we keep it hidden is we see in the past when we didn't have it hidden, people were making changes in there that was essentially corrupting the report, and it was creating a lot of support cases. And really, there's no real need to essentially change anything in the data tab. So, like I said, they're hidden. I'm actually just going to right-click on the summary tab. I could right-click on the report tab too as well if I wanted to. And I'm just going to click on unhide, and you can see I've got the data tab listed there. I click on OK, and now I've got it open. As you can see, it's not very pretty, and it's not supposed to be. You know, we just got the standard. I'm actually going to make it a little bit bigger. I know it's really small. There we go. You can see the column headers. You know, you've got device name all squished together, device ID. Some of it may not make too much sense to you guys. Basically, it relates back into the back end of the system to grab that proper information from the database. So when I was saying I recommend you don't make any changes, you know, if you were to actually even just call this device space name, right then and there, you've broken the report. So that's what I was talking about. Any little thing that you do in here will corrupt the report. There are some things that we can do, and I will go over that when I'm creating the template, but I just kind of wanted to show you that at a high level here. Next is the report tab. Now this is actually basically just referencing that data tab. So as you can see, if I actually click on cell A8, let me just double click, we're actually doing a formula, but you can see we're referencing the data tab. So it's saying pretty much equals cell A10 on the data tab. And it's actually kind of combining some cells together there, but you can see exactly what it's doing there. Same for the group, the distance. It's pulling from those particular cells on the data tab. And the reason we do that is because now we have the ability to analyze the data, create formulas, insert columns, and really kind of manipulate the data. Jumping from here, we have the summary tab. Now the summary tab is actually pretty neat, I'd say. It has a built-in pivot table. And for those of you that are, you know, a little intimidated by pivot tables, please don't be. It's not that scary. It's actually kind of fun once you get going with it. And I may be saying that because I'm a bit of a data nerd, but it is kind of fun. You can see right now, it just looks like a regular table. By default, I usually like to save it that way, where it's hiding the field list because I don't want to scare people off of what a pivot table is. But just to give you a quick snapshot, and I'm just going to show the field list, this is what's in a pivot table. And it also is referencing back to the report tab. So it's taking all of the information that's in the report tab, but allowing you to kind of summarize your information. So instead of getting all of the detailed line-by-line data, you can now have the ability to maybe group by you know, your groups, or group by your locations, whichever you want. Even by dates as well, which is really nice. It's a really nice, fast way to get your summarized information. And you can see here, I mean, basically all it is, yeah, I want to include group in here. So I'm just going to click on group, and there we go. I've added it in there. I can move group up above assets over here. And now I've got it, as you can see, I've got for group 1, I have equals 4 and 5, group 2, I have equals 1 and 3. And I can even just simply right-click and subtotal the group. Now I've got my totals for each group. Really, really easy. We will be going into this in more detail in the later session this month, but that is the high-level view for you. And you can see that actually the changes that I made, they actually kind of reflected in that chart. So that chart is built from that pivot table. Okay, so that's basically how my Geotab reports work and where the data is from. And I hope that kind of gives you a better idea, at least, of the process, I guess you could say. So just to go over what I was just mentioning, we've got the data tab, the report tab, and the summary tab. So the data tab is where the raw data is set. It's always hidden. I recommend to keep it always hidden. We've got the report tab where it references that data tab to allow for analyzing the data. And then we have the summary tab, which includes that pivot table to allow you to organize and summarize and chart your information. I'm actually going to create a template now, which I hope will kind of give you an idea from the process of creating it from the beginning all the way up to enabling it on a dashboard or an email. For this particular one, I'm going to enable it as a dashboard, but at least I'm hoping that this will give you an idea of how this should work. Okay, so I just have my Geotab demo database open. So this is the Geotab demo database. For anybody who's not aware, this is kind of the database that we use whenever we're providing demos. And basically what I'm going to do from here is I'm actually going to create an idle duration report. So there are a couple of places within the Geotab system where you can get idle information. Some of them may not be the best place to create your report from. So for instance, I can get idling from trip summary, which is a summarized report. I can also get it from the risk management report. And then finally, I can get it from the trip details report. Now, obviously, for when you hear details, I don't recommend that for a large, if you want to run it for an entire fleet for a month or anything like that. If really all you want to get out of it is the overall idle duration, that is not the report that you want to make it from. So what I'm going to do is actually create it from the trip summary. So I'm just going to click on map. And then I'm going to go to trip history, which brings me to my detail, and right from there I'm going to click on summary. So here I can choose my date and time period. I'm just going to do it for yesterday, just to keep it nice and simple for today. And then I can choose to run the report by device or driver. Now these options that you're seeing right now are very similar throughout everywhere in the system. You may see some areas have a couple of extra options or some maybe a little bit less, but the standard is the time, the date period, the sub-periods, and the display options. So for this purpose, I'm just going to run this as a device report. And then I don't know if you can see this, but we actually have the option to run by individual devices or drivers. And then we have some options below there. The first one being entire organization. If I were to choose entire organization, it would actually be one line of data, and it would just summarize the entire organization. If I were to choose any of these other ones, it would just give me the overall information for each one of those groups. So for this purpose, I'm going to choose individual devices or drivers because it still does include the group information, but allows you to still be able to see the individual information. I'm going to click on Apply Changes. So right from here, yes, we've got it in the UI view, but I'm actually going to open this in Excel, and I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it here. So when I click on View, you can see that I've got List, and it's highlighted in blue, which is what we're looking at right now. Then I've got the option for Report and Advanced, and then below there are custom reports. All right, so the report view is actually kind of a trimmed down version of the advanced report. The advanced report is kind of what we all know and love. It's got all the information in there that you've seen before. The report is actually kind of something that we've made based on information that we deem should be available in this type of report. So I don't recommend, if you are creating a custom report, to use that report option. I always go straight for the advanced. That way I've got all the information that I need to create the report. I'm going to go ahead and click on advanced. It's just going to run in here, and and then I'm just going to click on the Excel button. Now I'm just going to save this to my desktop. Okay, before I click on that button there, I don't know if you can see, up top here in the yellow, it says protected view. Be careful. Files from the internet to contain viruses. Unless you need to edit it, it's safer to stay in protected view. So as you can tell by what I just read, it's not scary. A lot of people see that and they're like, whoa, there's something wrong with the report. It's just telling you that this report came from the internet. Are you sure it's safe or not? Yeah, I'm sure. I'm going to click on Enable Editing. So right off the bat, I've got lots of information here. Now, as I mentioned, I just want to create an idling duration report. So a lot of this stuff I don't need. So to start off, I'm actually going to go to the Report tab. And you can see I've got all this information here, and I will make it bigger again. Sorry, guys. I've got my name of the vehicles. I've got the groups they belong to. We do have these period columns, which kind of relate to if I were to choose that trending information, which I didn't this time, so it doesn't really relate. But it allows, that's what allows us to be able to do the trending information. And then following here, we've got some, basic information, duration at a customer zone, non-customer. I've got my drive time, durations at the office or at home. And then we've got counts and percentages. So what I'm going to do actually is I don't really need any of this extra stuff to confuse myself or the customer. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and I'm going to delete a lot of these columns. I'm just going to move that date over because I want to delete that as well. So I'm going to actually just kind of click and drag and I'm going to highlight all these, and it's a lot that I want to take out. I'm going to take out all the way up to here. And I'm just going to right-click and click on Delete. You can see it's trimmed it down quite a bit. I've got my distance, my idle duration. I even actually have idle percentage, which is really nice. The final column that I don't really need is the max speed, because that doesn't really relate to the report that I'm trying to make. I'm going to click on Delete there. So now we've got it pretty cleaned up. Looks really good. From here, I can actually now kind of create my chart. So I'm going to click on the Summary tab, and you're going to notice something. It still has all of that extra information that I just deleted. And the reason being is this is a pivot table that referenced that data. I need to refresh it now because there are things that have changed. So I can refresh in a couple of ways. I can either right-click on the report and choose Refresh, or I can just click in the pivot table, and I can go to Analyze and click on Refresh there. So I'm just going to do that. And you can see it just made it a lot more trimmed down. I'll make this one bigger here too. There we go. Okay, so for the purposes of this report, I'm going to do a top 5 idle duration. So what I don't really necessarily need to know on the pivot table side of things is I don't really need the group name. I don't really need the distance. I really just want the names and the idle duration. And you can see right now it's sorting it by the actual names, but I want to sort by the actual duration. So I can just click on this little drop down beside name, and I hope you can see it's a little arrow here. I'll actually make this a little bit bigger. Okay, and I'm going to click on More Store Options. I know this is small, and I apologize, and I can't make this screen bigger, so please bear with me, but I'm going to choose this last option, which says Descending Z to A, and by default it chooses name, but I actually want it to be duration, idle duration. Okay, and then I'm just going to click on OK. So now it's sorted it from highest to lowest by the idle duration. And the really neat thing about the pivot table is that every time this opens, it will automatically be sorted that way. Now, there's one thing that you may notice here. I've got the from and the to in cells B4 and 5. There are a whole bunch of pound signs. And the reason for that, and this is kind of one of my tips and tricks that I'll kind of cover after this, but is because the pivot table by default is set to auto-fit based on the content in it. I usually like to turn that off because it can affect anything outside of the pivot table, which is those dates and the distance units. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this column bigger. I'm going to make it even a little bit bigger so I can, allow for months with longer names. And I'm actually now going to go into the pivot table. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Pivot Table Options. Once again, a small window. I apologize. The second one from the bottom, it says Auto Fit Column Width on Update. I'm just going to remove that checkbox. So now it will stay the size that I've told it to right now, and it's not going to shrink when there's smaller data in it. The next thing I'm actually going to do while I'm already in this window is I'm going to click on the Data tab. Now, by default, we have set up all of our pivot tables to automatically refresh the data when opening or running the file. There have been some cases where I've seen where if you create your own pivot table inside of one of our reports, this option is not automatically selected. So there have been times where we've had people come to me or support and say, hey, there's something wrong with the system. It's still holding on to that template information. It's not updating with the real fleet information. And that, I can tell you right now, will be 99.99% of the time, that's the reason. So always make sure before you're saving your report that that is checked, and then you will avoid that possible issue. So I'm going to click on OK. Now I've got my data the way I want it. And let's go ahead and just create a chart from here. So I'm simply just going to click on Insert at the top. And I know that I've got the newest version of Excel, so yours may look slightly different, but it will be in the same spot. And I'm going to choose the bar chart. And there we go. So right off the bat, you can see it doesn't look kind of the way I want it to on the dashboard. I want top 5. Now, because we only have 4 vehicles that have data, if I were to choose top 5 right now, it wouldn't change at all. And let me just show you what I mean. I'm going to go back into the pivot table and click on this little drop down beside name. And I'm going to go to value filters. And at the bottom of this list, I'm going to choose top 10. Down here, if I change 10 to 5, and I want to be sorting by the idle duration, and I click OK, it didn't change at all. And the reason for this is that everything past those 4 that have data is all zeros. Excel is not going to pick and choose that 5th person as the outlier because it's not fair. So it's going to keep all of those guys in there. So for sake of when I'm creating the template, it's fine that it does that. We hope that when we run the report for later purposes that we will have more vehicles that have information, and then it will only show us the top 5. And I'll show you what it would look like. I'm just going to kind of fuzz it just to show you. I'm going to change top 5 to top 4 just so you can see what it would do. And there you go. So it's now shrunk it down. It's only giving me the top 4. It's filtered out anything that was basically below those. I can still see all the information on the report tab. This is mainly just for the summarized data. One of the things that, and this is me being picky, I do this all the time. People make fun of me and call me OCD, but we've got these buttons here basically on this report, on this graph. I like to just hide them. You don't have to do it. This is just something that I like to do. I'm just going to right click and choose hide all field buttons on chart. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is actually remove this title that says total at the top. And the reason being is when you actually import this into the database, you're going to assign it a name, and then our software has a box around it that has the title. So it just looks repetitive to have it in, twice. Question?
So we have a question asking how you can change the size of the chart for the dashboard.
I'm going to get there. Yep, thank you. All right, So I'll get there in 2 seconds, I swear. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this title. And I'm also going to delete the legend as well because having it say total really means nothing. So I'm just going to click on delete. All right, so now I'm going to get to what Jordan was just asking about. So as you can see, the chart right now is pretty big. Our standard dashboard size is 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches, which equates to pretty much 300 pixels by 300. For those of you that have it in centimeters, I believe I ran into this the other day, and I think it was 6.35. Please don't quote me on that. I only do it in inches, so you can always play around and see. So every time you need to change the size of your graph, you need to open up the report in Excel and do it within Excel. So I recommend going into here, right-clicking any white space within the chart. So don't do it up here where you've got grid lines or on the actual data sets themselves, but maybe on the bottom right corner, right-click and choose Format Chart Area. Now, once again, mine probably looks different than yours. Yours will probably open up in a separate window, but you'll be able to find the information really easily. The first place that I go to, and once again, this is my OCD part coming through, is border. And I always choose no line. So I don't like to have the chart have a border around it, and that kind of goes back to how it looks in the software. We already kind of draw our own box around it, and if you have a second one there, it just looks a little bit messy. Next thing I'm going to do is going to go to size and properties. Now, once again, I think that's exactly what it says in older versions. I think there's a section for size and then one for properties. I'm going to go on to size here right now, and it's really small. It says 3 inches by 5. I'm actually going to change this to 2.5. And you can see it's changing the size of the chart to 2.5. There we go. So we've got it a lot smaller now. So that is that standard dashboard size. It's zoomed in right now, so it looks pretty large probably, but then I'm actually going to set up some properties. So the reason I do this, right now, the properties of the chart are kind of set to do whatever they want. So I like to lock it, and I choose the middle one. So I'm saying, yeah, no problem. You can move the chart however you want. I don't care, but I don't want you to resize it. Because what can happen sometimes if you don't have your pivot table filtered, or you've got the top 5, what can happen is you get new data, and all of a sudden the pivot table gets a lot longer, and then all of a sudden your chart gets a lot longer. And then it's all of a sudden in the software, it looks pretty strange. So I like to lock the ability to resize those cells. I'm just going to close my formatting. I'm also going to close this pivot chart field. And the reason for that is because I don't want to scare anybody off. So as you notice that if I click on the chart, click on the pivot table, it looks clean. I don't have any weird field lists on the side there. One final thing that I'm going to recommend to do is just bring down the size of the text by 1, down to 8. Same as on the left-hand side as well. I notice if you keep it at 9, everything kind of looks out of proportion. And I think that is my nitpickiness again. All right. So now oh, sorry, I think we have a question.
So somebody did ask a question that I thought would be worth bringing up. They asked why the current status, or the report right now is set to the kilometers, and how to change it.
So I live in Canada. And majority of the times when I'm in databases, my user options are set to metric. So when I run this report, it looks at my own user options, and it gives me that data. So for anybody in the U.S., make sure that your user options are set to U.S., and all of your reports will come out in miles, and especially for fuel miles per gallon, all that kind of stuff.
One point I'll add to that, though, is engine data specifically, if you ever get in there, pulls data directly from the ECM, and it'll pull data from the ECM as it gives the data. So there are situations you might see with the engine data where it'll be kilometers even though you're set to the U.S. system. Yeah.
Some of those vehicles are finicky. So in that sort of case, nothing we can do except for you can do some formulas to do a conversion. basically. Okay, so I've got my report looking the way I want it to. What I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to clean up the report. So, and this is more so because I want to make this into a template. So I'm going to unhide that data tab. Okay, and let me just make it large again. Now, I know I mentioned do not do anything to the data tab, and it's more so those headers that I'm saying don't do anything to. What you can do, though, is you can actually delete columns, and it's really nice because if I want this report to just be the idle duration, I don't need the report to pull all of that extra information and make it larger and make it the processing time longer. So I can delete columns. So I'm going to delete those columns that I deleted before. And you know, the headers, obviously, they look a little bit different, but they are the same kind of information. It may take you a little while to get used to reading those headers. But since I'm kind of used to it, I'm just going to go ahead and just highlight the ones that I don't want. Drag myself over here. Okay, I'll make it cute, and I'm just going to right-click and delete. Now, there's a difference. Clearing content is not the same. You have to actually physically delete the columns, or else, once again, it won't work. So that is one stipulation there. The other thing, I'm going to delete my maximum speed here as well, because I didn't want that. And there we go. The last kind of thing that I'm going to do here is delete rows. And the reason I'm doing that, if you started your report by pulling it for the entire fleet and you've got thousands of lines of data, you don't want those to still be there when you save it as a template. And the reason for that is when our system runs the report, be it as a dashboard, email report, or even when you're pulling it from that section of the software, what it's doing is it's actually going through all the existing lines of data and deleting them, and then it goes back up to the top and fills in the new information. So if your template has thousands of lines of data already in there, it's going to take a lot longer for it to process that data. So if you have some dashboards that probably shouldn't take that long because they're not a large report, it could be because your template is very large. So that is definitely something to watch out for. What I recommend, just keep 2 lines of data. I've already kind of worked with the data and I know what I want it to look like. I'm okay with deleting these lines now. So once again, don't highlight and clear the content. Actually delete the rows. So I've got my mouse over the number 11. I hope you can see that. And I'm just going to drag it down to the top, to the bottom. Another little tip, actually, instead of dragging, if you do have thousands of lines of data, you don't want to be kind of holding your mouse at the bottom of the screen until the data stops. You can actually just click on row 11, and you can hit Shift Control at the same time and hit the down button. What that does is it stops where the data stops. So you don't have to spend all that time scrolling and holding the mouse down. And I'm going to right-click on those rows, and I'm going to click on Delete. Okay. Now, once again, I'm going to rehide that data tab because I don't want anybody to see it. And you can see something here. We've got a whole bunch of reference errors, and the reference means whatever it was referencing before no longer exists. And that's because I deleted those rows. It's perfectly fine. This is just a step in the template creation. I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the data tab. Highlight those rows, and I'm going to delete. Final step before saving this is I need to validate my data. And what I mean for that is we have a name range in our report tab that is called all data, all one word. And all of our pivot tables are created from that all data name range. I want to make sure that all of the changes that I've made still have my data within that name range. So on the top left here, and I'm just going to kind of circle around and hope that you can see where I'm going here, where it says D4, I'm going to click on the drop down, and it's got my all data name range. If I click on it, it highlights whatever is in all data. And as you can see, looks like I've done everything good. All of my data is within that name range. Fantastic. whenever you're creating a dashboard report, always save the report with the tab that has the chart on it. If I were to save the report while I was on the report tab, all that's going to show, and I'm sure people have seen it before, is basically the top left corner, probably even smaller than that, probably about like that. That's all that you're going to see. Our system is smart enough to know that if there is a chart on that tab, it will only grab that chart and show it on the summary page. So now that I've made my chart or my report, I'm just going to click on Save. Actually, I'm going to save out because I don't remember where I saved this. Normally we just hit Save. I'm just going to call this idle duration. Okay, and then I'm actually going to go back to my database. I'm going to go to Administration, and I'm going to go to Custom Reports. For those of you who might be new to the reporting system, Custom Reports is where you manage the reports. It is not necessarily where you go to actually run the report. And you can see that we've got a column that says Report Data Source. That is where you would go to run the report, if that makes sense. From here, I'm going to click on Import. I'm going to find that report, and you can see something here. I'm going to click on Open. It's going to give me an error. It says the template must be an XLS file. The way our system works is it only accepts the file as a .xls format, which is 97 2003 workbook. By default, though, when the report runs and we pull it out, it comes out as an XLSM macro-enabled report. The reason for that is in the past, they were exporting as the older format, and the sizes were huge because it was just an older format. The new format cuts the size in half and allows us to use a lot of different formulas that we weren't able to use before. So I'm going to go back, and I'm actually going to just open my report that I saved. And I'm just going to save as. I'm going to change my type to a 97 2003 workbook, and I'm going to click on Save. You will get an error pop up about some compatibility problems, but it's not the case because once it runs, it will come out in that new format and everything will be fine. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the chart is now empty, and that's because I deleted all of those rows, so don't be scared, I didn't break it. Okay, I'm going to go back to Import. I'm going to choose my XLS file, click on Open, and now I've got my report options. So the report options are actually when you go into that section of the software. So if I were to go into the trip summary section of the software now with this report, I don't have to choose my options first. I can simply just go right to the View dropdown and choose my report, and it will run with the options that I'm setting it up with right now. So this kind of saves you all steps. I'm going to actually change my time period to last week and see if I can get some more data there. And I'm going to choose this option that says Always Show Devices or Drivers, and that's the similar option where we said individual devices or drivers. Something new in here that you may not know about, where it says there's a checkbox beside Show in Report drop-down list. That basically means, do I want this report to show in that View drop-down list or not? And this applies to every single template as well. So you can choose to show some or not. And this is kind of for if you only really want it for reporting purposes, for emails. You don't necessarily need people to be able to pull it from the software. Then you can take that checkbox off. Just going to click on OK, and now I'm going to go and actually turn this report on as a dashboard. So I can scroll down here in the list and find it, or I can just click, and I know that it starts with I, so I'm just going to type the letter I, and it brings me there. From here, I can enable email, or I can enable dashboard. For now, I'm going to enable it as a dashboard. I'm going to click on Show on Dashboard, and now I can choose my time periods. Maybe I want the dashboard to be monthly, or I want it to be daily, something along those lines. I'm going to keep it as a weekly, and we're going to have it refresh every week. For now, I'm going to keep the next runtime as right now because I want to see what it looks like. But I do recommend after you save it to go back in there and set it up to be run, every Monday, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, so that it's up and it's there when people log in. For viewers, I can have the option to display the dashboard to myself only, and I usually like to do this when I'm testing a report that I just created. I don't need everybody to see it just in case there's issues with it. Just show it to myself at first until I've perfected it, and then I can show it to everybody else. You can see at the bottom it says one user may receive the dashboard. That's perfect. That's what I wanted. I'm going to click on OK, and I'm just going to click on OK again because I don't need this window. And I'm going to scroll up here to my summary tab, and I should see it at the bottom here. There we go. So I did do top 4. I think I saved it as the top 4, so that's what we're seeing. So right off the bat, and you can see how quickly that works and how easily it showed up. It fits perfectly in that 2.5 by 2.5 space, and now we've got our data. So from here, I can just do a single click, open it up, and you can see that it did open in an XLSM format, the macro enabled. I don't know if you can see it at the very top here. And I can click on my report tab now, and I've got all my information, and it's showing me that it is, in fact, for last week. Okay, just to go over, I know we only have about 10, 15 minutes left. This is kind of what I did. I recommend using live data. What I mean by that is actually going into that section of the software and using real live data. You can use our templates that are in the custom report section, but they only have 2 lines of data, and you may find that you have to tweak your report a couple of times before you've got it. This way, with the real live data, I only had to do it once, and that's it. Clean the data worksheet of anything that you don't need in there to bring the size down. Clean that report worksheet as well. You remember that I validated by looking at the all data name range to make sure that I am still including everything that's there. Refreshing your pivot table. Always make sure you have that set. I imported the template in the software, and then I set it up to be a dashboard. So here's my little best practices, tips, and tricks that I've come across along the way. I did cover these. I'm just going to mention them again. The standard dashboard size is 2.5 by 2.5. You can make it larger. You're not set to that size. You can make it 2.5 by 5, and that would cover the width of 2 standard sizes. So you can definitely play around with the size. You can make it as big as you want, really. Pivot tables. Make sure that you've got that refresh data checked in those options. Make sure you've got the auto fit unchecked so that it's not screwing up anything outside of the table. And then always recommend to hide that field list to not scare anybody. Remove the border on the chart so you don't have the double lines there. Blocking those chart properties so that you're not skewing the size of it. The 2 very important things that I starred there. Save it on the summary tab with a chart if you want it to be a dashboard. Otherwise, you're going to just get a corner of the data. Save the template as an XLS format. Number 1, remember, if you do get that error, you'll know exactly what it is. And then you have the ability there to hide the report from that view list. A couple of things to watch out for. Too much data in the template taking too long to run. So I kind of touched on that where I mentioned in the template you don't need thousands of lines of data. It will take too long to run because it has to go through all those lines. Another thing I don't recommend to do is to have the report tab pre-sorted. So I'm going to actually open a report and show you what I mean by that because it might not make a lot of sense with what I'm saying there. Next, you can have your columns have filter on them. I go into data filter. I have no problem with that. Go ahead. Pre-sorting though. So I don't recommend to sort your highest to smallest on the report tab. Always do that on the summary tab. If you do on the report tab, you can see here I'm referencing data cell U13 and then U10 and then U14. It's all out of sorts now. It's not going to reference the same way. You're not going to get all the right information. So that's kind of what I mean by not pre-sorting the report tab, using the wrong report. And that's kind of what I meant where I mentioned I wanted the idle duration. I didn't need to use the detailed report. I only needed to use the summary report. So be careful on using the wrong report. Questions?
Yeah. For the dashboard, the summary tab, where you can put your dashboard, what's the maximum amount of graphs or reports you can have there?
You can put it whatever you want, basically. Now, keep in mind, pivot tables take up, it makes the report larger. If you have multiple pivot tables, your report is the size of it is going to be pretty large. So be careful on why you're doing that. Last little thing to watch out for is the detailed reports for the entire fleet. So, for example, trip details with too much data. Never really a good idea for a dashboard, ever. If you do need detailed trip information for the entire fleet, SDK. I would recommend using the SDK all day for that because, honestly, I don't know a use case for that where you would really need the entire fleet detailed information other than routing or something along those lines. Okay, so custom report repository. So this is something we actually just came out with. And this is on our help desk. If you guys aren't aware of our new help desk knowledge base, you can simply just go to helpdesk.geotab.com where you can find the custom report repository, but you can also find a whole bunch of articles that our support guys have written up on a whole slew of different categories. The custom report repository, and as you can see in this little image that I put in here, this is an example of one of them. I've put up a couple of reports now. It is going to be constantly being added to. But this example here is a weekly idle cost with a daily trend. I do have one for gallons and one for liters for my Canadian friends. Each report has a description of what it is, any instructions that you need to follow, maybe you need to put in some rules or anything like that, and then a quick little screenshot of the report, and then at the very bottom it says download template now. So I've had so many people come to me over the years and ask me, hey, do you have a report that can do this? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? And I just send it to them. Well, now it's all going to be in this one repository where anybody can go in and grab it whenever you need it. Last but not least, report matrix. So this is something that's in the works, but I wanted to kind of show you. This is something that I have created really, really quickly, but it's basically all the data that you get in every single one of our template reports. I've kind of put it into more layman's terms because I did grab from the data tab where you notice those headers don't necessarily always make sense. But it's actually really cool. So now you can actually go in here and you can say, okay, I want a report that has idling in it. What reports give me that information? And you can choose it. I'm just going to show you really quickly. There it is. Cool. Thank you. All right. Make this a little bit bigger again. All right. So I'm just gonna. This is my. This is called a slicer. This is in the newer Excel. It's a really neat filter. Instead of using just a simple drop down in the table, I can actually use the slicer and I can scroll through and I want to look for idling duration. If I click on idling duration, it shows me what reports have idling duration. Really nice. Once again, be careful on what you're picking. Just detailed report is in there. Depends on what you're looking for and what you want to create. But those are all the reports that provide idling duration. I'm hoping to be able to get something really cool where we can get it on the website and you can look at, I want a report that has idling and distance and something else, and it will filter it down and give you the exact report that you need. If you ever find when you're using this that you get nothing, it could be because what you want is a report that has information from two different reports, which you cannot match together. For that, I recommend the SDK. One final thing I wanted to mention, and I didn't do this when I was doing my example, I kind of wanted to go over just very quickly risk management reports or exceptions reports. When you're creating a template, you've chosen your rules in a proper order. Okay? You've chosen harsh acceleration, harsh braking, harsh cornering, seatbelt speeding, and that's the order that you've chosen when you want to create the report. You have to keep them in that order because you are referencing. Okay, so on the data tab, you've got them in that exact same order. If, for instance, when you go to import the report and you just choose the reports in whatever, or the rules in whatever order you want, your report is going to look like it's skewed data. So what is actually got the header for harsh cornering could actually be seatbelt. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just wanted to put that out there. Okay, questions?
All right, for those of you asking for the link for the repository, I actually sent it in the chat to everybody. So if you just open up the sidebar to your right, you can go ahead and click on the link right there and copy it as necessary. This presentation will be put up later on and by then or I'm not sure what this one will be.
It'll probably be up on the knowledge base for everyone to see. For everyone to see within the next week, everything that we are doing right now will be up on the, most of them will be up on the knowledge base for anyone to view. And from that, we can open everything up to you. Please make sure, remember you have the last few minutes you have for questions. And if not, hop online and find out what our next one is. And that will be a continuation of this one, and Angie will take us into a deep dive into advanced report.
Yes, the advanced will definitely be advanced. Not too advanced, though, but it is for a lot of people that have wanted to know about formulas and functions and how we can kind of manipulate the data.
Yeah, so hopefully you guys can join us for that, and hoping that today's session has brought you up to a place where you're not quite as scared of those pivot tables and you can go in and play with them. Keep in mind also that if you want to go play with any one of these reports, you're not going to break anything. Just don't import it back in and you'll be just fine. So go and play with anything you've already produced and get comfortable with it, and then you can import it back in.
The undo button is your friend.
And if you're looking for any of these reports and you don't see them, please reach out. We'll get them to you. As Angie mentioned, they are going onto the repository. If they're not there yet, they'll be coming. If you're a little antsy for them, reach out and we'll try and get them to you a little quicker.
Always let us know if you've had, you know, report requests that you get all the time for one particular report and that you think would be meaningful for every customer. Please let us know, and we can put that up on the repository for sure.
Excellent discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I think you know how to reach us if you need us. And with that, we're going to sign off, and we have a great week, and we'll see you the week after next.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.